Anyway, yeah, black atheists. So I'm one. There are others in the room, and and basically, since we don't have anyone from an HBCU, I was thinking that we would just have kind of an open forum discussion with me facilitating about what it's like to be minority of any kind, wherever you are, and atheist. So, who wants to talk other than me?
I have a question.
Yes.
What are things that people do in groups that make it harder for you to participate and feel welcome?
Ooh, that's a good one. So, what do people do in groups that make it harder for us to feel welcome? I know, honestly, for me, the hardest thing for me is knowing that they existed. And there's a certain amount of bad press that's out there about some groups. I know that for a while people were like, you know, earlier on when I was still religious, people were like, oh, you don't talk to those people, you never talk to those people because, you know, they just don't listen. Actually, I didn't hear so much about the eating babies, but that was a really interesting twist I got later. But, you know, it was one of those really, it was more just a stigmatized group because being atheist is stigmatized. We are stigmatized. We are seen as, you know, less than. So I think it was more of that, and then knowing that what events were going on, having those open conversations. I know our free thought group actually has periodic roundtable talks with the other Christians associations where we will discuss things. And I think those things are great because then at least you know, for people who are on the fence, you know they exist and you get a wider group of people coming in. But I didn't really go to atheist stuff until my fiance was like, hey, I'm going to free thought, want to come with me? And I'm like, free thought? What's that? Do they get dinner afterwards?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. And so that's kind of what brought me into the group, was literally having someone else who I knew who was going. So I think, you know, the kind of, you know, the great coming out, you know, just like gay people come out, the more of us who come out and it's known that we're not the only ones, the easier it will be for us to come to groups and not feel alone. Anyone else want to field this one? I know, I'm not the only brown person in the room. Come on, y'all.
I think you covered it.
Samuel?
For me, it's not so much that, it's just as long as a group is open and friendly and open-minded, welcoming, then I think that's really all that. You can't do anything more than that.
Yeah.
Kind of to the broad spectrum thing. Once groups get formed, they do get cliquish. And as soon as you have that, you start getting an in-group, out-group bias, where when you people come into the group, you don't immediately want to socialize with them, or if you even have, if you're tabling or something, you don't necessarily want to talk to the people who come up, because you have your friends. You're always, there's like, at our tables, there's usually like 10 people staffing it, because people just show up and want to hang out. Mm-hmm. And then when a lot of people feel intimidated on talking to us, because it's, oh, there's a big group of people, I don't feel comfortable. Or we may not feel very warm. We may not be very warm to them because they're from the out group.
Yeah.
Can you explain what I mean to say about it?
So, for those of you who came in, the previous speaker isn't here, and so I, on the whim, decided to facilitate an open discussion about minorities. I know about minorities and atheism. So,
How are you? Good lady.
She's doing great.
Yeah.
Welcome to the chat. Join us.
So we were just talking about what things can we do as organizations to make people of diverse backgrounds feel more welcome in our group. So, you know, we mentioned letting people know that we exist, doing things with other groups, as well as trying not to be so cliquish. I know it's hard because you do end up having your friends and just having your group of friends and hanging out with them. But what could we do to get out of that box? Yeah.
I've always found that the way that you have discussions within your group tends to largely affect how cliquish it is. For example, I know some groups that will do they'll do a discussion time and they'll do it as like one big group. But sometimes that's that's very uncomfortable to people who are new to the group or that don't fit in with the general group mold. I've kind of found that it can be helpful to have small groups that are semi-random. Like if you have a group of like 7 people and you let people join their own groups with it, but you have a group leader from whatever facilitate. It generally produces a comfortable way to engage people in a discussion.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Something you taught me a long time ago, and I learned via experience in small groups, don't ever look, if you only have an individual from a community and they're the only person from that community, don't look at them and ask them a question. Go, what does your community think? And expect one person to speak for that entire group. And I'm sure as atheists you've experienced that. And lots of different people have experienced that for many different reasons, but don't do that. That's really not nice. And it's a bad idea. People will run away.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. You've made them uncomfortable.
Oh yes, I actually do come from Utah, so our pool of colored people is pretty low. And the ones we do have is the ones the Mormon Church pick off from us, so. Okay, so basically, I suggest we get like the few like colored people there are in such a highly white state, 'cause our group is like 100% white. and like 99% male, so.
Do you have a Black Student Union?
I think I'm pretty horrible about that, so.
I mean, because honestly, if I was really looking to reach out to minority groups, go directly to the minority groups. If you have Black student unions, if you have Black frats and sororities, I mean, go directly to them. Try to have events with them. Even if they're just things like, open talks or open discussions, or even just a lunchtime meal or an after dinner ice cream or something. I think let them know that you exist and that you're open and wanting to communicate with them, especially in a group where, if you're the only ones on campus, it's really easy to stay within your small group because that's where you're comfortable. Yeah. But at least if you're with your group and with another group and they show that they're open to you, you might be a little more willing to be like, hey, maybe I should check out what they're doing. Yes.
Something we were talking about that at lunch actually, and one of the issues that came up was that the Black Student Union or the historically Black fraternities and sororities, if they have a strong religious identity, they may not be all that interested in co-sponsoring events with atheists. Do you have some ideas on topics or topics or kinds of events that where there might be common interests where that aren't going to seem off-putting to to a group that is maybe largely religious?
Well, if the group is generally conservative, not like if they have values that are just obviously different than yours, they might not be interested in doing service projects with you, for example, but they might be interested in debate. One of our most successful events ever was when we engaged with the Muslim student group on campus, and we had we packed an auditorium with a debate with Dan Barker versus whoever they picked. I don't really remember this off the top of my head. But it was a great way to just have that discussion.
And I wouldn't throw away service either, because especially with the frats and sororities, one of their key things is doing service. And if there's something that that they do or something that you guys could do together, that would be an equally good way to spend an afternoon. Yep, Julia. Oh, sorry, it was behind you.
Most schools have a Black Studies department or African American History department. Those professors might be also a good way in order to access other groups or attract other people. That's another tool you have for networking. It may or may not work, but it's an option.
Yeah.
Following off the idea of fundraising or service projects, we had a fundraiser that was in no small part funded by Christians on campus. It was our Send an Atheist to Church program.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So little things like that, just finding ways to encourage them to help out your group or help out another group with you is always good.
Yep.
And even building on that, it's a good way to break down stereotypes between, they might be a really conservative group, but, oh, the atheists want to have, a bake sale with us or whatever. That's a good way to say, okay, we're just like you. We're normal people. We're not, scary, dangerous atheists that are trying to corrupt you or whatever. It's a good way to break down stereotypes. They see that you're just in school like them, regular people. You just have different set of beliefs.
Right. So, yeah.
One major inroad, at least for those religious groups that are less conservative, that tend to side with issues that we like, is basically through doing things with the queer movement. So if you have churches that are queer friendly, and you engage them in a cause supporting GLBT people, they will often be very, very willing to work with you.
Especially right now, given the whole ruling with the NAACP and Obama and that whole thing, right now that might be, at least for the next 6 months, a really good way to come to common ground. Because, a lot of, I think, was it in Massachusetts where they pulled people before and after Obama said what he said, and literally there was like a 15-point shift in the African American community.
Like from 15 negative to 50 positive.
Exactly. To how they feel about the GLBT community. So that might be a great, at least for the next 6 months, next year, place to join. Yeah.
A practical example of something that a lot of colleges in Central Ohio do is they walk in the Pride Parade every year. And so you can grab people, International Student Union, Black Student Union, multiple groups, get the money together and walk in the Pride Parade. Our Pride Parade actually, we had 230,000 people this year. So it's a great way to do PR in the city where you are, get to know a lot of other people, and get out in the community as well.
And then go for drinks afterwards.
I'm curious about that. Like, what do pride parades are usually in the summer? Like, are there typically like college pride parades that are separate that go on during the school year? I don't know about that. Not that I don't support.
Yeah.
That's awesome, but I'm just wondering like if there are other ways to get involved.
No, but I know a lot of other schools do have big other pride festivals. I know my university used to have a weekly pride festival that was actually in the fall. So, yeah.
I know a lot of groups do big things around the Day of Silence.
Yes.
A lot of times they'll dedicate that whole week. So that's a good event to watch out for networking with other groups.
And National Coming Out Day. So, yeah.
I'm not sure. I'll bounce this off of you. I would also think that there's definitely a lot of things we could do to go more directly actually at civil rights, because the atheist community is a really strong supporter of civil rights across the board. And and I know personally I'm shamefully ignorant of the Black free thought movement, but I know it was a very large, strong movement, and it's kind of fallen to the wayside. And when we talk about historically important people in free thought and secular movements, we don't talk about a lot of Black people, but they were there. They're important. They were important in abolition and all kinds of different movements, women's rights as well. And I think if we can incorporate that into us, not just do it just to get people to come in, because that's not really the point. The point is, isn't really just to try to snag people. I don't think. I think the point is we want to be the type of group that everyone wants to be a member of.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're interested in the group, so we want to know that. And so those people are important, and we should be talking about them more, I think.
Yeah.
I would actually add on to that, it's like if you're looking for, when you're looking at, like, what are your discussion topics, what are your speakers, it's like, if it's, once again, it's like, 10 more reasons why God doesn't exist, and let's talk about the history of women in Europe. There's a lot of other topics that, there's the obvious ones, history of African Americans and free thought and so on, but there's also just sort of things like, how can we apply, can we apply skepticism to social justice questions? It's like, and, talking about things like, poverty and drug war and, the history of, sort of the, connection between, religion and racism,
Right.
sexism and so on. Just sort of look at the topics that, that you have just, not just for your big speakers, but just for your weekly discussion groups. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, this is the week that we're going to talk about race, and then we just don't ever have to talk about it all, for the rest of the year. But just, what are some topics that are of interest to people outside the group that's already in your group, and see if you can, draw more people that way.
And if I could just add something to that, I know some groups would like to sometimes avoid those topics because they want to find topics that everyone can agree on. But I think those topics are actually going to be more useful because they actually are going to generate more active discussion.
Right.
Just having that talk where everyone goes, yeah.